From Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and the studios of 850 AM WFTL, this is Outlaw, America's alternative voice. Streaming around the world at outlawshow.com. This week, we meet the man who helped overturn Florida's ban on gays adopting children, attorney Robert Rosenwald. Here's your host for Outlaw, a real legal eagle himself, Dean Trantalis.
Welcome back to Outlaw, America's alternative voice. We have as our guest this evening attorney Robert Rosenwald, who has been in private practice and also worked for the American Civil Liberties Union. And we're talking tonight about gay adoption and the right to adopt by a gay and lesbian individual, which has now become law in the state of Florida. We've been talking about the history, some of Robert's history, as well as the history of the ban. And we're at a point now where I guess it's important to know how Florida's law compared to the law of other states. Are there any other states today that ban it?
Well, there's never been any other states that banned adoption as explicitly as Florida banned gay people from adopting. Florida's law said no person who is a homosexual may adopt in Florida.
Right.
And the way homosexual was determined was it was defined by the courts as if you have ever had gay sex or if you are currently having gay sex. And so anyone who, even if you weren't gay, even if you were just some trucker having some illicit relations in a bathroom, you couldn't adopt children under this law.
What happens if you were abstinent?
Well, if you were abstinent, it would depend. I mean, you could get around the law by saying that you just didn't have sex. I mean, and there were a lot of people who did that, and there were a lot of lawyers who got their clients around the law by just telling them that if you remain abstinent for a while, you can say you're not gay because you're just not having sex. And it also gave the courts a reason to say that this isn't something, we're not attacking gay people, we're only attacking gay sex. But that really wasn't it. It didn't matter who you slept with. It said if you checked that box on the application that said I am a homosexual, you were out.
But isn't the fact that gay adoption has become such a touchy issue is because there's still a societal sense of, this icky feeling about gay sex and the feeling that, a child growing up in a gay household is going to be influenced in ways that it shouldn't be. It's this sense of abnormality that many people feel that the gay population represents, and that in addition to the abnormality, this idea that a gay parent is going to, this sense of molestation, this sense of causing the child to be gay that might not otherwise be gay. Aren't these issues don't they always surface when it comes into the discussion of why gay people should or should not adopt?
Well, Dean, you talk about two different things, and I'll talk about them both briefly. First is the ick factor, and that has been something in gay rights litigation that has been a problem since the very beginning, that when you talk to straight people about gay people having rights, they picture the first thing that comes into their minds, especially straight men, is two gay guys having sex. And they say, ick, I don't like that. And so they're against it. And so the first thing that we had to do as an organization worldwide, as a group of people, as a tribe, was public relations. We had to do public education that being gay wasn't just gay sex.
and having the world finally come our way in terms of television shows and images and all kinds of everything that the press used to do to defeat the progress of the gay community was actually coming around to help support it.
Right. Everything that they did to demonize us, now we were being normalized. And many in the gay community will argue with you now that it was the wrong thing to do. There's intense debate that we were being marginalized and we were being mainstreamed into this white bread existence that we should have never had to adopt, that we had a culture of our own, and that we should have never had to adopt this straight person's culture in order to gain acceptance. But through Hollywood and through the choices that we made in the gay rights movement, we decided that we were going to go for mainstreaming, and we successfully did it. And so now, while there is still an ick factor, and I think there will always be an ick factor, and I think for gay people, when they think about straight people having sex, there's an ick factor. So that will always be there, but it is much less today than it was ever before.
And the idea of child molestation and parents turning their kids to be gay, how did you overcome that prejudice as well?
Well, that's the second thing that I wanted to talk about. First is the ick factor, which is just a gut reaction. It is the gut reaction that people have to something that they don't understand. And the way that you defeat that is with science. And that is what we did in our trial with Martin Gill versus the state of Florida. We brought forth the world's foremost authorities on child rearing, including on child molestation. And the science, as it turns out, is well developed. It's 30 years old. People have been studying this forever. And it is crystal clear in the scientific literature that gay people make just as good a parents as straight people. But more specifically to your point, that on molestation, that gay people do not molest children. It is clear that men molest children much more than women. It is incredibly uncommon to find women molesting children. You'll occasionally hear about a woman teacher who dates a student or something like that, but most of the time it's a guy who's molesting people. But 98% of the time, that guy is molesting a little girl. He's not molesting a little boy.
So it's mostly straight people molesting children, not gay
Exactly.
people.
And so what we did in our trial in the Miami-Dade court was put before the court the world's foremost authorities on all of these subjects: child molestation, drugs and alcohol, whether everybody who is gay has AIDS, whether if you have AIDS you can raise a child, whether
so all these issues came up at trial?
Every single issue. What we had to do was think of every single argument that a person could make against gay adoption and put on an expert to defeat it. Because that was the state had such a low burden. Their burden was if they could come up with any conceivable rationale.
A rational basis, is that what it's called?
The rational basis test. It's the lowest constitutional level. If they can think of anything to support the ban, they win. So we had to do their case for them in advance, think anything that they could think of, and put on an expert to disprove it, and we did it.
And who was the judge at this time at the trial court level?
Well, at the trial court level, we had a seasoned child welfare judge, Judge Cindy Lederman, who was
in Miami-Dade County.
In Miami-Dade County, she was the chief of the juvenile division. So her job was to oversee kids who were in foster care or who were juvenile delinquents, who were criminally involved with the
So she had a history of child care and what's in the, because basically my understanding is that judges are always looking out for the best interest of the child, and that's actually the legal standard.
Well, that's supposed to be the legal standard. It's always supposed to be the legal standard. The law says the best interest of the child shall be the chief consideration of the judge, unless you're gay. Then you need to think about something else.
So you won at the trial level, and then the state appealed.
The state appealed. The state appealed on the day that we won. Before we even managed to walk out the doors of the courthouse, they had filed their appeal, and we went. And so then we went to Florida's 3rd District Court of Appeals, and we briefed the issue before the courts. We pointed out all of the scientific evidence that had been put before the court, and then we had an oral argument, which was a very emotional and exciting day for all of us. It was held before a packed courtroom of maybe 500 people, all of them there from both sides, with all of them hanging on every word that the lawyers said and that the judges said. And it quickly became clear at the oral argument that the arguments of the state were simply based on prejudice, but they had no facts to back them up. The arguments in favor of equality for gay people and for treating children with gay parents just the same as you treat children with straight parents was backed up by solid science.
Why would I not think that that same scientific evidence was used by prior counsel who took your same role with equally sympathetic clients, and the appellate court still found against the parents?
Well, they didn't have me arguing it,
I'm
Dean.
sure that was the reason.
No, seriously. There were plenty of great lawyers who, in the 7 cases before mine, that went and argued to try to overturn this law. And in fact, some of the lawyers who were involved with our final appeal were involved with the Lofton appeal. So we built on the experience that those lawyers learned in the other 6 cases in order to build this case.
They were probably ecstatic that you had won at the trial level, and here now they're on appeal, but they're defending an appeal as opposed to taking an appeal.
No one ever expected us to get to the part where we were defending the appeal instead of taking the appeal. No one expected us to win at trial. Like I said, the last email I got from the board of directors was, this is a case you can never win, but you should fight it anyway. And so that's where we were left.
I wish you had told us that when you applied for your funding with the Graves Foundation.
Well, luckily you had written the check by then, so it did. So it was all right.
I know that there was a time when the final arguments were made, and everyone was in recess, and we waited week after week, month after month. Many people in the gay community were waiting for the results, and then word came out that a result was going to be issued on a certain day, and yet there was a sense of anticlimatic feeling, I think, at that point. You won, but tell me a little bit about how you reacted to the win.
Well, I mean, it was the culmination of my career. It was, and I consider myself to be a young lawyer, and
you're very young, Rob.
and to have tried the case of my career at such a young age, and to have won was, of course, I mean, it was like winning the Super Bowl and the World Series.
It was historic
all at once.
No, it was a historic event, not just for your career, but for the gay community, for the state of Florida.
But it was not. But it was anticlimactic only in the sense that the work we had done together with funders like the Graves Foundation and with other organizations, the work we had put together was different than anything we had ever done before, to make an integrated effort for public education and litigation to bring us to a point where the court could rule and it would not be overturned by some sort of constitutional amendment or something like that. So we did the work. So it was, for the people who did the work, it wasn't completely unexpected.
No, exactly. That's the point. It's not that it wasn't a welcome decision, and I don't want to leave the impression that it wasn't people rejoiced over it, but I think you had done such a good job, and there's some water there if you need it.
Thanks.
The people, you guys did such a great job. You were so convincing. Your arguments seemed to never have been challenged or had any kind of intelligent response from the state, that people were sitting thinking, well, how could they possibly rule any other way? That's how much faith people had in your advocacy in this issue. And certainly I'm sure Martin and his partner were at the edge of their seat. Here they felt, my
they
God,
were going to lose their kids if we lost this kid.
Right.
How much pressure is that? I
Right.
mean, it's like
For
a
them,
death
I'm
row
sure it was.
case.
Right.
I mean, if you lose this case, your client loses their kids.
Right.
Good job.
I know, exactly.
That was what we were facing, and that's
Right.
what he was facing. So it wasn't. It was very climatic for us. It was good for us because at the oral argument, it was a 3-judge panel. One was a guy we considered to be pretty moderate and persuadable. One was one we considered to be liberal and we hoped was in the bag, and one was a conservative who we thought was going to be completely against us.
And how did they vote?
They voted unanimously in our favor. And the questioning at oral argument, and that preceded the written, or we didn't know who won until months after that, but the questioning at oral argument by all 3 of the judges made clear that they all understood that the science backed us up and the state had nothing to back them up except for the prejudice of 30 years ago.
And the state really didn't take it to the next level of appeal. They just let it sit. Is that correct?
That is true.
So the decision of the District Court of Appeal was the First District Court of Appeal.
It's the Third District Court of Appeals, which governs the southeastern part of Florida, like Miami and
Monroe County.
Exactly.
And so it became the law of the land of Florida. Because the state decided not to appeal it, and so that is the status of the law. So tell me, what have people who have, men, women, what has been the reaction within the gay community that, what conversations have you been having with people? Is it something that do people really appreciate the success that you had? Tell me, has it really been appreciated to the extent that you feel that it merits?
I think it has. I think that people all over the state and all over the country appreciate the importance of our victory. I mean, they've been personally congratulatory to me and to my team, Leslie Cooper and Shelby Day, who also litigated the case with me. But as far as how it impacts their lives, people definitely understand it at an intimate level. People come to me almost daily and say, now that the ban is lifted, what do I do? There's all these foster kids, how do I help one of them? We've wanted to adopt for years, we have no idea what to do. Thank you so much for what you did. We've had a foster child for 10 years living with us. We've been afraid to try and do anything. Now that we can do something, thank you so much for giving us peace in our lives. And that's what people have given to me. And that's what is happening all over the state. Stability is coming to people's families where there was no stability before. And that's good for the families and it's good for the children.
Tell me a little bit about kids in foster care. It's my understanding that there are many thousands of kids still in foster care, still seeking homes, still seeking parents. Has the lift on gay adoptions helped in any measurable way to try to find homes for these children who before there has been none?
Well, there hasn't been any qualitative data taken yet. We don't have a study saying that X number of children went to X number of same-sex households. So I can't give you a number, but I can tell you that the people who are interested in adopting are now willing to do so. And the people that I talk to in the child welfare community tell me that gay people are coming forward and that children who never would have had any chance of having a parent at all, parents, children with disabilities, children who had been subjected to abuse or to alcohol poisoning from their parents in the womb or something like that, that would make them very, very hard to adopt. Older children who in the normal sense would never have a chance of adoption suddenly have the chance to be adopted. And so this is, everybody recognizes, whether we know exactly how many or not right now, everybody recognizes that this is good for kids and it's good for the state of Florida.
Tell me what you think about how the right to adopt and the fact that the gay community is starting to adopt. Tell me a little bit how you feel that has impacted the culture of the gay community. Because before, there may have been partners who lived together in a household situation without children. Now we have children.
Well, that's what we're talking about, the mainstreaming of the gay rights movement. I mean, I think that, and of the gay rights community, I mean, I think a lot of cultures go through that same dilemma. Do we want to keep our culture, or do we want to be accepted by straight white people? And
has it stabilized relationships, you think? Has it completed the home setting that now people, whether they're two women or two men, now have another dimension to their life that helps keep their relationship and their home together?
Well, I don't know about in Florida. It's only been a year now since we've had this victory, so we have no data on whether families stay together longer because of it. But I can tell you that nationally, the data is quite clear that parents who have children, families where there are children, stay together longer, and they have higher efficacy, higher happiness, higher degrees of personal enjoyment in their lives. And so we can assume that in Florida that will be the same.
Well, you raised a point which I find kind of interesting, because I've been sort of part of the activist community for about 20 years, and you
don't look old enough to have done it for 20 years.
When I was in high school. But the goal has always been that the gay community has always wanted to be included. They've always wanted a seat at the table. They've always wanted to be accepted. There's certain irony that you point out tonight, and that is that, okay, we have been given a seat at the table in many situations. We have been accepted. We have been brought into the fold. And now there's almost a rebellion against that, because they don't want to be absorbed by the mainstream climate. This sort of acclimation to everyday America. Now that we've been included, we don't want to be there anymore. It's like, what is that about?
Well, there's some people who don't want to be there. We fought for the right to be at the table. Not everybody needs to be at the table, and we need to fight just as hard for the right not to be at the table if we don't want to be at the table. Right now, we have expended all of our energy and all of our time into getting our seat at that table, and we are getting it. We're getting it through the right to adopt in Florida, the right to marry in 6 different states around the country, the downfall of don't ask, don't tell. We are getting the right to do the things that straight people take for...
discrimination, even in jobs and housing and so forth.
Well, we're still working on that.
Right.
State by state, we're working on that. We're working to get our seat. We are getting our seat at the table. The question is now, what is the next step? And is it to fight for the right not to be at the table? Do we have to allow children into gay resorts? Do we have to allow do gay organizations have to hire straight people? Do we have to act just like straight white guys in order to exist? Or is there room in our society for there to be more than one model? And that's what the next century's question will be answered, and then we'll see how it'll be answered.
Well, I think that living in South Florida, we have a jaundiced view about the progress of the gay community throughout the country, because we have made quite a few advances. There's been quite a bit of equality that's been legislated and appreciated, and I don't think that same measure of equality exists in other parts of the country. Yes, we don't have gay marriage, but we do, at least in South Florida, we have a lot of protections that aren't otherwise afforded to members of the gay community, which is why many people from other parts of the country travel to South Florida. They visit here, they party here, they buy homes here, they eventually move here, they set up families, they adopt, they do the whole thing, okay? But not everybody around the country have that opportunity.
Well, of course, South Florida is an enigma. We have people in Tallahassee passing laws to take away our rights, but we have South Florida where there are just a ton of gay people with a lot of gay money living here and starting families and living lives. And so there is that enigma that is this area where we live. It's the listening audience of this radio station. I mean, in Fort Lauderdale, in Miami, in West Palm Beach, where there are a lot of gay people. But when you're fighting for gay rights, The adoption case was the only one that I ever did in Miami, and that was because it was first statewide, a statewide law. Whenever a crisis called, wherever somebody was really being mistreated because they were gay, whether it was a kid being kicked out of school because they were transgendered, whether there was a kid that was not allowed to come out at school and was suspended because they were gay, or whether it was a kid who wanted to start a gay-straight alliance in Okeechobee, Florida, I was called outside of the listening area of this radio station to northern Florida and to the other parts of the country to defend the rights that we take for granted here. So we're very blessed here to take for granted those kind of rights, but there's a long way to go in some parts of the country, and here we have to decide where we want to end up.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We're taking this debate to a level which I don't know if we're ready to, because the rest of the country hasn't really caught up with many of the advances that we've been able to succeed in. I mean,
but Dean, the rest of the country will catch up. Where we go, the country will follow. Well, somebody has to go first, and it can be us or it will be somebody else. But the right to not be a straight white guy in a straight white guy's family will be the next debate that will be had within the gay community and will be had within the straight community about gay people.
And I
right
think
now we are just
always have that. We'll have that. We will have those options.
We will have those options, we hope.
Well, we'll see. On that note, I want to thank you very, very much for being a part of this discussion tonight. I think you've brought to a very personal level exactly what the fight for adoption has been about. We are now been included in one of the many states that allow gay adoption. So if you're looking to start a family and bring children into your home, this is this place to do it. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about our show for next week. Our show is going to include all the openly gay people who sit on the judiciary in Broward County. Those are our guests next week are going to be Judge Susan Greenhawt, Judge Robert Lee, and Judge Lisa Porter. Three very important people in our community who have been making their mark and have a lot to say about it. So I invite you next week to visit here, 850 WFTL Outlaw.
From Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and the studios of 850 WFTL, this is Outlaw, America's alternative voice, streaming around the world at outlawshow.com.